Hey, how's it going? I have a confession. I really enjoy the game Kingdom Death. When you buy it, it comes in this giant box of all these different goodies that you sit there and you dream about, and you're like, oh, I spent like $400 on this crazy thing, and I'm gonna put all these guys together, and I want it to be this, I want it to be that, and oh, this campaign's gonna be so good, and all the little pieces are gonna be so great, and everything. And it is. It's all of those things. It's a unique experience. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. But I have a confession on top of that confession. This is where my game has been living. All the way in the back of my office corner, under some guitars, under a bunch of other piles of crap, and just it's a 40-pound box now that I have a bunch of different expansions in it. It's hard to pull out, and every time I want to go, even to play just a showdown, or maybe I just want to try out a monster, I have to pull this 40-pound box out, clear everything out, get a separate table for the board, a separate table for the box. I have had very little time to play just because of the way that the game is stored. I know if you just have the core box, you're going to have a really fun time. You won't have any of these issues, but I do. And as you can see from my cluttered area, I don't really have a lot of places to display the models either. So I need a solution. What would my solution be? This is what I came up with. I know to a lot of you, this looks like a box, because it's a box, but it's more than just a box. It's a box that's the size of the cards and fits the mini itself. It's made out of wood. It is lightweight. It pops down so that when you lift the box up, the bottom won't fall out, but if you tap it on the top, then the bottom comes down and you can play. You only need to pull this box out and your tokens and your board if you're going to play a showdown. It's pretty neat. If you're going to do settlement stuff, you're going to need all the other pieces, and you can keep that in your normal core box. But with these stackable little guys, I can play the game whenever I want, and I don't have to pull out a bunch of stuff. I can just go right to the next monster, and maybe even get 5, 6 showdowns in an afternoon if I want to. And much like Brad Pitt, I'm sure you want to know what's in the box. Well, this is what's in the box. There you see it. I'm putting some felt to keep the mini very nice. I'm putting no felt on the bottom, but just enough room for the card trays. The whole thing is going to be made out of dirt cheap MDF, and I think I can do the entire core box for 30 bucks. That's American. That's of 2019 in August when I did it, so prices can go up and down depending on, whenever you watch this. But I think it's a really cheap solution. I wouldn't take a sledgehammer to them, but for the most part, you can protect from a small drop. You can stack so that you don't have to buy a glass case for everything. And I was having problem with the felt on my Feldher foam pieces. They were rubbing and doing other stuff, and this doesn't do that. It gives enough space around it. This is just for certain monsters, and you're going to have to make boxes of your own because I'm not selling these things because I don't have the time to do that. But I'm going to show you how to make the boxes. Now, when I originally put these up on Facebook, people were giving lots of different suggestions, and I'm going to tell you why I discounted all of them. This is made with a table saw you can get for a couple $100, or you can rent for almost nothing. If you have someone in your life that is handy, they probably already have one, and it only takes about 10 minutes per box on the table saw to cut up all the pieces. Then you can go home and do all your gluing. That's what keeps this super cheap. If you were going to use a laser, you're going to spend several $100s on laser time because it's $15 for every 10 minutes of laser time, even on a cheap end where you can get it from a hackerspace. So unless you know somebody that has a CO2 laser instead of one of those cheap engraving pieces, you're going to spend at least $6,000 on a Glowforge, or probably $14,000 to $20,000 on something a little larger than a Glowforge in order to just fit the MDF pieces in. So this is, I'm telling you, yes, I've heard all the suggestions on laser cutting and whatever the other stuff is. Great. A little bit of glue, a miter, and a table saw, like a miter cut using the table saw, and you're going to save way more money. I've heard people want to do an acrylic, they want to do it this, they want to do it that. You can do that with whatever materials you want. I don't think they work as well on a table saw as just cheap MDF, but yeah, whatever suggestions you've got, great. 3D printing it takes 25 hours or more in order to print something like this, and you're not going to get as thin a piece on the outside. You're going to have to go to at least a 1/4 inch in order to have the structural integrity. So, you know, it's for me, this MDF, super cheap, super fast, and I think all of the pieces you can get pretty easily on Amazon to get started.
So there's a lot going on here, and one of the things is you need materials. You need a place to start. You need a table. You need a drawing pad. You need pencil. And you need a ruler. From that point, you can start the entire project. Using the ruler, what you want to do is measure out how tall your pieces are. You want to measure out everything in the stacks and just see how much room you need. Then you measure about how big your miniature is and how far you're going to need to go. You take the base, you figure that out, you look at your furthest points and you measure that part out. Okay, so now you have an inkling of an idea of how big this thing needs to be or how small it can be and still fulfill its purpose. What I would recommend is taking your drawing pad, flipping it to a page that you want to use up, and start drawing. So all my projects, they need a label. Kingdom Death, this is the box, and there's a lot of failed pieces to it. I thought originally I would do maybe a clamshell design so that the top and bottom wouldn't fall apart. I looked at that and I realized that it would require too much of a radius and it wouldn't be structurally sound. The other part that would be a problem is that the rear, if it was a clamshell design, would have basically meant it was open. In order for the rest of it to slide back, instead of sliding back with some extra space, it would slide directly where everything was supposed to be, and that wouldn't add too much extra room. So I said, okay, my basic design is going to be where the mini sits on top with felt and the cards will sit on the bottom. They might have felt, they might not. I made a little space for each one, and I wanted to have some type of design on the box that would tell me what it is, so when I looked at it on the shelf it would be evident to me exactly what was going on. There was a lot of options for how to decorate. The lantern designs for Kingdom Death on the website, there are many. You can go on Google image search. You'll find as many as you could possibly hope for. And I thought maybe what I would do is make a plane of faces on one interior side, and then I would make the phosphorescent or fluorescent paint on the outside with the lantern, so if I hit it with UV it would glow. If you followed me on Instagram or you follow the Kingdom Death newsletter, the UV paints on the 2019 is either Halloween or Christmas. Put up a couple different ones. Made it onto the newsletter. That was me. I made the UV glow in the dark stuff, so I kind of wanted to fill that in and just maybe that would be my signature. Well, unfortunately, clamshell design went out the window, so I had to go with a regular straight box, and that would allow me to have a fair amount of integrity as far as strength, and it would also provide to me a way to stack things really easily, and I wouldn't have to worry about the interior strength flopping over or squishing from the sides, because then I would at least have the back panel, and then I'd have this back panel, and I'd have this center shelving that would glue together and offer the strength that might otherwise come from a top or from a front. So at least, you know, the third, fourth design, whatever it is, the crazy idea that you had, you'll be able to eventually get to what you need. Now, looking at my cube, I took all the measurements and I figured out the amount of void space that I would need and my maximum heights. One of the things that you need to do after you've measured everything out is start realizing you need tolerances. You need to provide space for your cuts. You need to provide space for the width of your materials, and in order to know both, you have to select a material. I selected cheap MDF. Now, the MDF happens to just be big enough to fit the box. So I can make each side of the small 40mm White Lion using this cheap MDF material. You get 30 sheets from Amazon for $15 or $13, something like that. So it's around 50 to 40 cents per sheet buying it from Amazon. I am sure you can find it cheaper, but that's just what I went with. This one is 3mm, and you can get them at 6. You can get them, you know, different, whatever you want, but it's strong enough to be able to handle a little tiny miniature flopping around, hopefully preventing it from flopping around because we sized it correctly, and some cards. The cards being on the bottom where most of the weight would be, then we wouldn't have to worry too much about things falling apart. And the size of the box and the way that we're going to cut it on a miter so it holds together better by being able to, instead of meeting like this, they go together at a 45, and so they actually touch, making more surface area for the glue to hold on to. So those are some of my conditions. I thought about different other things, like this conceptually is going to be my Phoenix and my other larger pieces, in that I'll have a stronger back piece holding the whole thing together so that there's no bowing or flexion, and then instead I would also have the cards and everything in a two-piece flat void that would make it easier to just stack a couple there and keep it as small as possible by spreading the cards out in their thickness. So measurements, all that crazy goodness, how much I was going to use for the felt, because keeping in mind that I have felt on the box and that prevents this from sliding open. It also makes it, you know, smooth on the table. I put some, if I hold it like this it doesn't fall off, but if I give it a good shake it does fall back. That's from using Velcro on the felt to give it friction to hold it into place. Taking all of that into account, I did my initial measurements, then I added the material. Since I'm doing it on a miter, I basically just added for the miter an extra width of, or thickness of the material. So in this case being about 1/8 of an inch, sorry, a 1/16 of an inch or so, then I just went another 1/16 to 1/8, and I added another 1/16 for the width. You do not want too much play in the card areas. You want it to be as tight as is reasonable, and you need to be able to fit your finger in it. So if you notice how I pop things out, I just dump it, so I don't need a lot of room. I just dump the cards out that way, and I dump them back in this way. So there is some room, as you can see, if I get this right. So there's some room in there, but it's not so much that it's going to wiggle around. If it wiggles around, you might end up damaging the cards, and if it wiggles too much more than that, the weight shift up and back and forth and all that can cause it to break all of the glue. So that was my initial design phase. That's how I made my design decisions. Let's look at what the next step would be. Alright, so next up, what do you do? Well, you make yourself some cut marks, and you do it on one side, the side that you're going to have on the interior, so that when you paint it over or you put the felt on or whatever, that it doesn't show through what might be on the paint. You also don't want you want all the miters to be going a particular way, and if they end up going the wrong way, then you kind of screw yourself out. One thing that you want to do that I've done here is label what it's supposed to be. This is the bottom. It's the interior bottom, because that's the only bottom that we have. The rest of the lid and all that doesn't necessarily have a bottom, and it would be a different size. I also wrote a miter on every edge that I need to miter, because I don't need to do the miter on the edges that are open. So for the lid on the bottom, all the bottom edges, they can be left alone. It's actually probably better if those get left alone. And on the interior, the front-facing pieces in the top, those can all have open faces or non-mitered edges as well, and that helps index what those are going to be and has everything sit flat, and it's just better off to have it that way. Also, I guess when I'm going to put either the adhesive felt or whatever I'm going to do with it from the next batch here, it'll just stick a little easier and have a little easier time with those edges. So, that being the case, I wrote, as I said, where all my miters are. I wrote the measurements for each edge, so no matter how I flip this stupid thing, when I'm on the saw, I'll know exactly how to measure it. And I have an idea of how many of these sheets I'm going to need. So what I'm going to do is every single one of these sheets, I'm going to go through and map out all of my pieces beforehand. You don't have to do it this way, but I'm going to suggest you do it this way. Sometimes things get turned around and you have to kind of like figure out where you're at, and once the pieces have all been put together and now it's time to make the puzzle and do the gluing, at least you got the marks, and that's really, really helpful. At this point you could make some adjustments as to where the shelf's going to sit, but I'd say maybe wait a little bit on that. Some people might paint now. I'm not one of them. I don't think you should do that. Just, you know, hold off until after the gluing comes in, and then the paint won't get in the way of sticking to any pieces, because if the paint is sticking to the wood, then you're not necessarily going to get the best adhesion. So go ahead, just use a pencil, write everything on there, and we'll move off into the saw.
And here's my saw. You don't have to get a DeWalt, but you can. The main things are that it has a miter. You can see how if I flip a lever there, I can tilt it and I can go various degrees. It goes up to 45. You can get a lot of different types of miter saws. You don't have to do it on a table saw like this. You can just use whatever you've got and you're familiar with. But I'm assuming if you're, learning from me how to make a cheap little box, that maybe you weren't too aware of what to use and what tools to use. So this is probably the best option, because you can get a nice straight cut. Also, there is a little turn knob that allows you to set the dimensions pretty well before doing the cut. Lots of cool things. One thing to keep in mind though, that when you do a miter cut, you are going to be setting at an angle, so the edge is going to be inside of the cut instead of at the cut. So it's going to be a little bit smaller. That's why I'm saying you should add at least the thickness of the material to each side that you're going to do on the cut for your measurements, just so you're able to account for that change in dimension. You can take another look at some features you should probably have if you do get one of these table saws. You can do the measurements back and forth. So that part's pretty cool. I use that a lot. It helps. If you're going to use really thin pieces, you might have a little bit of adjustment you need to make in order to make sure that nothing slips under anything. That's me showing you how the miter works. You just pop it back and forth, and whenever you need to make a cut, there you go. Try to make all of your cuts at the same time for the same thickness though, so you don't have to do a lot of adjusting. And once you've taken all your safety precautions, you can go ahead and get started with the cutting of things. Here I am. I'm just doing a straight cut here for a couple of the pieces. And you want to keep your fingers out, use all the safety tools, all the safety precautions, make sure you got some type of eye protection and all those kinds of things. And this is me just, there you go. I'm sawing things. I'm not going to do time lapse or any crazy thing. You just go in, make sure your cuts are whatever dimension that you think they should be. Try to keep it on the edges that you drew. Double check everything. If you do as I suggest and you do all of your cuts of the same width at the same time, then you'll be in good shape. And yeah, if you need to make an adjustment, you can do like I'm doing there and keep sliding through another piece. When you do the miters, one of the things I've found, if you want the cut to be on the interior, especially if it feeds on the right hand side like I've got on this saw, then you're going to want to flip it upside down when you send it through. So that will keep it so that the miter is always where you want it to be. Here, this is what happens when you change that miter. And I'm going to go ahead and send this piece through. There you go. And yeah, should it have been upside down? Yeah, but what I was doing on this one was making rails to go inside, and it didn't matter what side the miter was done on because they were going to flip the other direction anyway. And when I went back to make the other adjustment, you can see it's now going to be upside down where you can't see the markings. So that's pretty much it. The saw does all the rest of the work, and that's just me cutting away on things. So when you're done, probably take you, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes, whatever it is, to complete all the different pieces. If you're using these same materials and if you're working effectively, then you can go on to the next step. If you're wondering why I didn't film this, I'm going to reiterate the safety thing. Turn the stupid camera off and focus on the giant spinning blade of dismemberment, and that will definitely keep you attentive and paying attention to what you're doing. That's why I just did these simple cuts and turned the camera off after that just to do a quick display. So same thing for you. Don't get a finger chopped off because you were trying to dick around with setting up your selfie cam or whatever to do your own videos. Don't make a video first. Do all the cuts and everything first, or get somebody else to do the filming for you. That's my suggestion for anybody out there.
So here we are, back. We've got all of our pieces cut. We have stored all of our trimmings. We might need those later. They make really good paint sticks and other cool stuff. And the other thing that they do really well is laser engrave. So if you're going to do any laser engraving tests, this is ideal for doing that so you don't ruin your regular piece. So what are we going to do with all this? Well, first things first, I already have a white lion box. So what I need is a butcher box. The butcher would be the next one in line. So I need to do a quick fit up and find out if all of my stuff fits and where it should go. So these two pieces are the same. These are the sides. This fits on the bottom, somewhere around there, and then he fits on the top. So what do I care about? I care that he fit, right? And that this fit on there too. Because of the miters, I'm not all that worried. As long as it fits within the interior piece of this, then the whole thing will be fine. So the miter is as far in as it needs to go, and everything else will be set up just right. So looking at where he's kind of sitting, I need to put the shelf somewhere. Now the shelf is going to actually act as the spacer for my fingers as well, so I can get it pretty tight to there. So what do you want to do once you have all that kind of in? Locate your pencil and you know, give yourself a little wiggle room, whatever, but that should be fine. Okay, I got a mark. I square up that mark, and then I take some glue, and I'm using this kind of wood glue. It doesn't really matter, it'll hold. Any kind of wood glue will be fine. And I'm going to glue the rails on. And once the rails are on, then I'm going to fit the interior shelf onto that. So from where the rail's at, interior shelf, Butcher, he sits just fine. See, plenty of space. And yeah, so from that point on, I got a lot of different tools I'm going to be using in order to match these miter cuts up. And exterior top. See how I have all of these labeled? So I know I can just set all the exterior stuff aside. And deal just with the interior pieces. So I know this thing fits kind of like that, and width is fine. So yeah, I dry fit. It all seems to work. What else can I dry fit? Well, I can check the exteriors and make sure that they are still just a little bit larger, and they are. I don't know if you can see from my fingers. Where do we go? Okay. Yeah, see? Man, perspective is not working very well. Okay, there. Now you can see. It's still larger. As long as it's larger on those sides, then that's the only thing that matters, because it's still exterior. When you start putting your felt on, felt is, let me grab the box for you. Felt has a thickness, and you can see it's gonna, where are we at here? Okay, it's gonna double up in a couple spots. So if it's a bit wider, I'm not worried that much about it. I can use some Velcro, the soft part of Velcro or something on the inside to make it match up, and the felt itself is just gonna wrap all the way around and add that extra thickness, so it's not that big a deal. If you do it right, then it won't hold on until you shake it out. So what can we do in the meantime? Well, part of the whole experience is making it look good at all times. So these edges that I didn't miter are not going to be glued, so I might want to just take my trusty dry erase markers and hit it with a coat of black. So when everything else is put up together and the felt is on top of everything else, I still will have a nice dark edge that matches the rest of the coat. You don't have to do this, you don't have to do this ever, but it is simply my preference to have everything match up. And it should, because it's some kind of alcohol base, should not seep in so much that there's no room for the glue. And I'm not gluing these sides either, so you can see how it fits black. I'm gluing the mitered sides, so I'm not doing anything with those on the dry erase. And anything else that I'm going to glue, I'm not worried about on the dry erase. The only edge on the exterior pieces is the bottoms that are not mitered, so I'll hit those. Cheap way to make the box look better. When I made the first box, I wished I had done this, and I had to go through while everything was still on. And it was on the annoying side. I'm not gonna lie about that. Yeah, so here's our next bottom piece. And it'll also help me orient the pieces when I'm gluing everything together, because I'll know from these blackened bottom pieces and front sides on the interior section which ones are the bottom and how to orient it and how to fit everything together. It can get confusing with all of the edges and how they go. So that's the step. We're going to go on and do some gluing. So I need a second. Okay, so got my glue, made some lines of where to put things. I know which piece is going to go where. I got to do with glue. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit this guy on the side where it's written, because I want to use up all the writing parts as much as I can and cover them up, because that looks sloppy. So then I'm going to take my glue, because there's just so much of it. You don't really need that thick a layer, and put them together, and then drop my rail on the line. I mitered it so that it would look a little better, it would hold on pretty well. Next thing you can do, is grab yourself some clamps. Okay. Check it, make sure that it's still on your line, as nice as possible, and that should clamp it in place pretty good. This stuff takes like 20 minutes to dry. It's not really a long time, especially when it's thin. It doesn't matter as much. So yeah, just make sure it's all there. Pop that on. Take my other clamp. Other side. Pop that on. So they're gonna sit there and dry, and I can move on to some other pieces. Okay, so I made a mistake. I put these on upside down. So I peeled them off, just kind of rub it down. You know, it's gonna get thinner, not a big deal, but I need to go back through and remeasure it with this closer to the bottom, because that's the top that's open, and the bottom has a miter, so it's gonna get the, yeah. I could have just stored the miniature in the bottom, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna go ahead and fix it. So all I'm gonna do is measure this distance instead from the bottom, and then do the same thing over and re-glue it. So there we are, new and improved, correct orientation, everything's glued up, and it is drying, so we can move on to some other pieces. Alright, we got to change the scenery here, right? So what is all this stuff? Well, these help you join corners together when you glue them, so that they don't wobble one way or another, and they're pretty handy, so I'm going to be using them. And then I always have a stash of little corner brackets of various sizes, width. Alright, quick battery swap and we're back in action. So these things I use with clamps. So when these pieces here are too large to fit inside of the various areas, I will use the metal clamp. If in an emergency the material is too weak, I'll go get some clamps and you know, these standard Room Essentials clothespins, and use those as well. But they fit on these various sizes, so little tiny ones, other stuff, you can get them all from the same place, hardware store. Alright, so what's going on here, you might ask? Well, I did a dry fit and I put the pieces together. Now I'm going to clamp one side down, and then I'm going to move the other one slightly out of the way. This one here, slightly out of the way. I'm going to move it so that I can get the glue in on the spine. And then I'm going to glue it together. So let's release this one a little tiny bit so it doesn't doesn't get too far. Take my glue. And hit that edge. Could I be cleaner? I could be cleaner. Am I gonna be cleaner? Probably not. So, slide this guy onto this guy. Make sure my edges are tight. And then clamp it. Oh, there we go. Clamp it into place. And then I can wipe all that off. Good to have gloves. And if I need to, okay. Alright, so glue's on, wiped up some excess. It's tight on there. That part's good. What I like to do though is set one of these guys in. Sorry I did this on trash day. You can hear the trash guy. You want to just get it as close to flat as possible. And you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So now, two sides glued. I got a little space. I'm gonna do everything I can to try to decrease that space. Sliding everything together. I might have to undo one of these guys. Really get it in there. Adjust the clamp just a little and hit the clamp back down. So keep adjusting until you have a good connection with everything. There you go. Sorry the trash guy came at the same time, but that's what happens. Flip it over, look like it's okay there. Flip it over. Make sure it's okay here. And that's gonna dry. I have one going, I have two going. They take maybe an hour to dry. So watch yourself some other YouTube videos. I got one on painting my Nemesis game. You can watch that if you want to do a do-it-yourself sun drop system. 3 videos and just talk about cleaning it up. Otherwise, you know, I'm gonna jump ahead and watch somebody else's videos, and I'll see you in a second. Alright, so stuff has been drying, which is pretty cool. I went ahead and added a side. I want to add this one on there too, because things are dry now. But this would be a good opportunity to do things like paint. If, there you go, with whatever primer you want to use. If there's an area you can't get to, then now would be the time to do that. If you're gonna do that, take whatever big brush you have, whatever, you know, if you're doing miniature painting, you might not have a bunch of big brushes, but take whatever the biggest brush you have is. Maybe you'd even need a sponge and save yourself the time. You want as big a brush as you can so that you get even coats. So that's kind of the key at this time. The other thing you're going to want to start thinking about is, right as I'm recording this second, Amazon has yet to deliver my new batch of felt, but I still want to continue building, and that's going to require some Velcro. you can get cheap Velcro. It doesn't matter how big it is, it doesn't matter the width of it, whatever, but the main thing is that on the lid, you're going to want to get pretty far up towards the top here. You're going to want to get there because that's going to be your brake. It's going to be your stop. So that when you lift the box, it doesn't just flop out, but you can give it a quick shake and it'll pop back out. If you were to put it down here, then you're going to have to shake it the whole way and pull on it. Whereas if you have it way up at the top, then you can give it one shake and it'll flop right out. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put this piece of Velcro, self-adhering. And I'm just going to stick it to the inside on the top of the box. Okay. So, I don't know, maybe I can do some adjustments. There. You know, you can see it right there. It's stuck directly to the wood, so the paint won't affect it or anything like that. And it is the soft part of the Velcro, just to be clear, because you don't want it to grab and tear and get stuck on the way. So make sure you're only using the soft part of the cheapest Velcro you can find. You really just want something soft. If you didn't have Velcro, you could use more felt, trying to double up on it, but I think the thickness of the Velcro helps the best for this circumstance. Then we're going to put the pieces together. I've already started doing the interior box. So yeah, it's all glue drying and everything, but this is the point when one of the sides is still open that I'd like to start painting. So when it's glued up and it's finished, then I'm going to go ahead and hit all of the inside pieces with some paint. Very busy during the day, the trucks and things. The interior back, at this point right now, it's a good time to go ahead and hit it with the paint. So I'll show you how I would do that. This is stupidly easy. Just paint, brush, don't hit the edges, and you want, no one's going to be able to really see this, so you're kind of just doing it for color. So you're not really caring about the strokes. If this were the exterior of the box, I'd try to do one long stroke for the whole piece. This is the interior and it's all the way at the back, so if someone took a flashlight, then maybe they would be able to see your brush strokes, but don't invite them to your home. You can get rid of those people, and your life will probably be much better for not having somebody who is creeping into your miniature boxes with an intense flashlight looking for brush strokes. Okay. Do you need to do a second pass of this? Why would you? Again, this is the interior side, so no. And you try not to get the edges so that they still can adhere with the glue. Okay. That's it. It's going to dry, and I'll be gluing that on next. Alright, so next step, we're waiting on things to dry. What else can we do? Well, I made a printout of a graphic I'd like to use at the front. If you looked at, moving stuff out of the way, if you looked at my lion, whoa, where'd you go? Okay, you'll see I used a graphic. Doesn't need to refocus every time, you get the idea. in order to be able to tell them apart on the shelf. So what I did is have a printout of the back of the AI card, and I moved the wording up and took out the words AI using Photoshop. You can use GIMP, you can use whatever. That's not what this video is about, but I'm going to make it so that this fits here. So it doesn't fit perfectly, and I kind of want that to be the case because I want the butcher's graphic to be the thing that shows the most. So I know I'm going to take off maybe ½ inch on each side. So let's figure out how we're going to do it. I have a regular paper cutter. You can get these cheap. And I'm going to line it up so that the edge of the graphic cuts, and then do the same thing on the other side. Edge of the graphic, make sure it goes straight, cuts, graphic cuts, graphic cuts. And I know this is oversized. So what I'm going to do is I got my box, and I'm going to kind of figure out where I should cut it so that it fits. How's that look? Okay. Same thing. I want it to kind of center. So I'll make some creases. I'll make some creases. And I can just fold those creases a little bit more so I have a good cut line all the way down. And so I'm going to have those edges still there. Okay? Go back to the cutter. Cut. 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 So now I have a big graphic of the butcher. Is this all I can do? Is this all I'm gonna do? No, it's not all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get an idea if it fits. It does. Zippity doo dah. There it goes. Alright. Here's the problem. When this is gonna sit on there, you're gonna still see those white edges. And then it's gonna destroy the illusion. So, take trusty black dry erase marker, hit all those edges. Same thing we did on the wood. Okay. So now when I go to paint it and I put this down, if there's any white showing, I would be embarrassed. So there's no white showing now. There's nothing there. We got ourselves a graphic. We'll stick it on there. Alright, back again. We've got more to do, and our opportunity exists while things are drying. Everything's dry on this guy. It's dry enough where the parts I'm going to continue to touch are not going to be affected by anything else. So let's go ahead and prime it. I'm going to switch to the foam just because it's a little larger, and drop a little primer on there. Don't have to be precious, it's just primer. And since the foam is a little bigger than the brush I had, you want as big of a brush in width as possible so that you don't have too many strokes going too many different ways. The foam might be absorbing a fair amount of the paint. It's okay, just add a touch more. And that's what you want out of it, right? If you feel like that grain is not going to be your favorite, finish it by going over it the opposite way. Okay? How many sides can we do like this? We need to do all of the sides like this, but at a certain point we have to let them dry or we're going to get paint all over the table and it's not going to work right. So we'll get a couple more. Let's maybe do the top. See, I already got some primer dripping. Not the end of the world. That's what this table is for. If you had a nice table, I would say put some parchment or something down that would protect it. I would not recommend doing this on a nice table. Your grandmother's dining room set, whatever. I don't recommend doing it on any of those things because I don't want the liability of having told you to do anything. So anyway, that one looks nice. I got two sides done. I can, if I want to, just hit the edges here with some primer. It feels good in the hand. A little bit of that gloss effect. Cover up those edges. You know, that's what can happen. Alright, let's go on to the next edge. Few drops. Nothing crazy. Just make sure I don't see any more wood. This is a latex, so there we go. If you can, try to have all the strokes go in the same direction so that when you see it on the box, it looks good. It'll look like it's wrapping around in some continuous form. Alright, we have a decision to make. We can do this side if we're not going to lay it down, so I'll just have to hold it in my hand, which is going to mess with the focus a little bit, but at this point, if you've stuck through with this video this far, you know things are not always in focus. So let's just keep trying. And that's it. It's really all you got to do. By hitting it two different ways, as far as the grain, you can make sure you didn't miss any particular pieces, and that everything gets basically an even coating. It is really dry today, so things are drying pretty fast. Just not the glue as fast as I'd like, but you know, I'd like it to be instant so I can move on to other things. But that's just not how it's gonna work today, is it? So. Yeah, I'm liking this sponge a lot better than the brush. If you can get a chip sponge that's bigger than your other brushes for this kind of application, it's probably worth it. I don't know if I talked about what I use these sponges for. I think I did in the Nemesis video, so you can find out more if you watch it. It is the #1 video that I've done every month. It seems to be consistent, so it's popular. If you want to go back and see how I upgrade other components to other games, then that is up to you. There we go. Yeah. So, just hitting it. It's primer. It's something that might have to take a couple coats. It's designed to kind of need a couple coats here and there. It's the same stuff I use on my minis, because it's just primer. It's just a latex, nothing special. How you doing? Regular day. I'm primer. Using up everything I can that's still inside the sponge to get the most out of it. And so there's still a couple of like glue tracks and other stuff, but you know, your level of perfection is your level of commitment. And for me, I have a box. It's pretty well clean, and a couple of spots where I had my thumb, but I can live with it. Now, here's the deal. I put some Velcro in here. That has to be the back. So I know there's a front, and I know there's a back. So find where the Velcro is at, which is on this side here, which means this side here is the front. I'll set the front facing me, and after I'm done with the next step with all the brush, because I want to use the brush up, I'm going to have the label stuck onto here, and I'm going to let it dry a little bit before I start working with more glue. Not only to let the paper dry, because the paper is a little wrinkly and stuff, but to let this guy dry. The bonding between the Elmer's glue I'm going to use and the wood, I'm not that concerned with. So let's take a look in here and we'll see how dry we have things. I think it's okay. So this side here is not getting glued. The other side doesn't have the blacking from the dry erase marker and has the mitering. That's going to get this put on top. And what I noticed is that I don't really care if this has felt on it. I prefer just having the sides and everything. This one is kind of an also ran, so I'm just going to go ahead and black it out. How you feel about that? I hope you feel good. It's going to happen anyway. Just go with it. So while I'm letting stuff dry, I'll just get everything done that I can. Sitting on there, being awesome, doing our stuff, singing our song, making our kingdom of death so cool. Yeah. Okay. So there's that. flipping it back over, let's look at what's important. This is going to have felt. I'm never going to see it. So this here might feel better if I go ahead and give it a little bit of primer love as far as that part goes. Same thing on top. It's a maybe if any of that's going to be necessary, but I just kind of like it all to be consistent, and that kind of fills in any spots that the dry erase marker didn't get to. Okay, so next steps, what can we do? Well, the cardwell, there's no reason in the world I'm going to waste money on felt on the cardwell. So let's hit it. Okay, we got some primer in there, and then we're just gonna the felt would just make it stick to the sides when you pull the card sleeves out. Could, if you didn't use card sleeves, bend your cards. So don't use felt in the cardwell. Okay, just use good old-fashioned paint. Okay, and make sure it's dry enough to withhold or withstand the tension of the brush that you're using. Okay, so got more in there. I'm afraid to shove it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to still keep getting in there until I hit the whole thing. Most of the time, all you're going to see are cards if it sits there, so you know you don't have to go crazy with this. Most of the time you're going to look at this from the top, not necessarily from underneath. It's not like it's a Westminster dog show and they're inspecting the testicles of the various poor animals as they do. You know, they hit them on the undercarriage for whatever reason they find appropriate. You, as a painter, are just giving it a little extra love, and there it is. If you get drops of paint, who gives a damn? Because you're going to cover it in felt anyway. And you're going to want to cover this in felt because that's what protects your mini and any paint jobs that you have. But you're not painting your cards. At most you're putting them in sleeves, so that's why this is fine. You know, I'm a little light on the paint right here, so I'm just going to dab that section just so it'll go all the way through. And like many parts of paint, you really don't want super thick coats because it just takes forever to dry and would be blobby. But that's kind of how it's going to look. Okay. When you look at it, it's totally blacked out, and the rest of it will have felt. Alright, now you just gotta wait for the felt to arrive, and then I'll go on to the next step. Alright, so I'm gonna throw in something, a little bonus, just as far as your options go with felt. I have this pink felt. I'm gonna use a demonstration. You can use whatever color you want. Sometimes they come in these sheets. This is Creatology I bought from Michael's a long time ago. this was supposed to be a puppet's tongue or their inside of their mouth, and that's why I have pink. But you can take your interior, and maybe it's better to do it this way, but just wrap the longest piece however you want. You can wrap it around, get it tight on there, and figure out where you need to cut it. So fold it, cut it, you know, there or just before where the edge is at on all the different sides, and then just glue it. Just glue it to this. You can use, in my opinion, the same wood glue will work. It doesn't matter. Don't use something expensive like a super glue, because that's pointless. Use something cheap that you have a lot of, like the wood glue or some Elmer's glue or something like that. But whatever color you decide, if you're going to do this on whatever minis you've got, just kind of figure it out. You know, it basically fits about where it's supposed to fit. And if there's any of this wood peeking out, just go back and hit it with your primer, and it'll take that stuff away. You could hit the edges now with the primer if you want, but I would say just do the edges so most of the glue sticks to the wood and it will adhere that way. And the excess that you cut from there, you put that excess inside here, okay? And then you would do the same thing and glue that part in. If you have a more creative way of folding it, feel free, you can do whatever you want. But that's if you were using these sheets, and that covers the edges so that they hold pretty good, and the bottom so that it slides pretty well without having a bunch of paint chip off, other things like that. So that just makes everything nice and protected. If you think the butcher would look better in pink, use pink. You know, maybe that's the kind of butcher he is. Okay, that's up to you. You do whatever color you want. But I have some self-adhesive stuff that I want to try coming from Amazon, and that'll be the next one that I do. As far as, you know, the continuation of this demonstration. But we're gonna work on what I can still work on today, and that is the box front. Okay, so this is the front. If you can see in there, I don't know, maybe I'll adjust whatever it is, but the felt from the Velcro is on the bottom side, and this is the top side, so that's the front. Okay, what are we doing? We are taking our cheap school glue, some regular Elmer's school glue, because I think it lays a little easier than if you were to use the wood glue. Main thing, cheap. Okay, so we're gonna you're like, oh, that's gonna look bad, it's gonna have a bunch of wrinkles, blah, 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 you know. Well, we're gonna do something to try to mitigate those wrinkles. Okay, but we're gonna get whatever layer we need. Okay, and then we're gonna take the flattest piece we can of our scraps, and that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a thin layer of the Elmer's glue, as thin as we can get. Okay, so as thin, as even on all the different stuff. It's kind of pooling towards the center, so I'm gonna get all that off there. You know, try to get it. All right, so from there, I'll stick it on another glue stick or whatever. Okay, get all that gook off of there as much as I can, making sure I got as even of a amount on that piece. Chuck the rest. Okay, taking making sure we have it right side up. Okay. Okay. And then I'm just kind of gonna lay down the butcher. And yeah, you'll get some bubbles. You'll get some creases. So you just kind of keep working it back and forth as much as you can. Until you don't. Just keep rotating out to the outside, and you'll get a pretty flat piece. Okay, so I got a little divot because it's wet. What divot? You know what I mean? As long as it's not white, we're not worried about it. So, okay. Alright, there we go. Got it in focus. So that's it. I got some of the wrinkles out. It's there. It looks wet right now because it's wet. And it will look dry when it's dry. Anything that's excess, anything that got off on the sides, just, you know, hit it. So this box top is complete. I don't have to worry about anything else. I just basically have to let it sit for about 24 hours, and all of the little bits will be dried up. Yeah, if you work too much, you'll get another little hit spot. Just hit it again, and it won't matter. Okay, so I think I've achieved everything except gluing this back to here. Some glue dabbed onto it, so I can just, honestly, with the primer, you can do that too. It doesn't matter which material you use. Dry erase things work fine because they soak in. But I'm going to go ahead and glue this on, and then I'll probably just set this on top so that it weighs it down and it finishes doing its glue job. And that will be everything I can do until tomorrow, and then we'll continue the video then. Okay, so we're back. Some felt showed up. Another type of felt showed up. Okay, so two different types. Both of them have an adhesive backing that peels off. This one is a little softer, and this one is a little finer in the grain. I want to use them in two different ways. The back piece here and the sides I want to use in this top layer. It's a little softer. The bottom is not going to see as much going on, so I'm going to go ahead and use this for the bottom. The sides I think need to grab a little more and offer a little more thickness, so I'm going to use this top piece for that. that is going to require measuring, and this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet, but that doesn't make it perfectly wrap around anything. So first thing I want to do is try to get the longest side to do something for me. I think I'm going to be best off if I start from the inside, that down there, set myself up with a crease here. Okay, so if I got that crease going, go all the way around as much as I can. So it's gonna not quite go all the way, but I have my cut points. I know where I'm measuring from. And I can also set my crease on the inside edge. So I've got kind of a map now of what I need to cut. I can do it a couple different ways. I'm gonna try what I think is gonna be the easiest way first, and just get a hobby knife. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Maybe it's not sharp enough. We'll see. Yeah. Failing that, that doesn't seem to work. I'm not that worried about this table, as you can see from all the other stuff on it. When that doesn't work, or if it only gets you halfway, at least it gave me a mark to do it with the scissors. And now it seems to go pretty good with the scissors. Keep in mind, I'm not a carpenter, I'm not an upholsterer, I'm just a guy that had an idea, and people were saying, oh, I wish I could do that. And I'm like, why can't you? Like, I don't know how to do that. So, I'll make a video. Are these half the same size? Maybe? Is that going to help us? Yeah, they're around the same size, so I might get 2 uses out of this. That'll be good. The first use, though, is going to be wrapping everything up. Okay. Try both pieces here. Okay. So this one's a little thicker, so I'll actually get a little more use out of it. Let's see what happens with this adhesive. I really don't want to show too much of it. Just want it to kind of get on the edge there. Okay. So I think I'm pretty good in there. I don't know if you can see it. Okay. But it looks like I got it down to the edge, and then I can slowly work everything tightly. You don't want wrinkles. Wrinkles are fine. I'll date a girl with wrinkles. It doesn't bother me. A couple of them, you know what I mean? If they look like Arseface from Creature, I'm gonna have to have some other things going along. But you don't want wrinkles here. It's part of your project. You want to get as close to the edges so that they stay all black. Yeah, there we go. Oh, so we're still pulling along. And okay, so there you go. Nice flat. Looks good. Let's keep going. Pull. Now we're at a new seam. So we got a decision to make. If we don't cut it right here, then chances are pretty good that it's going to be too thick. So we're going to need to cut it just kind of giving it a crease point. Again, I'm not an upholsterer. If you want to follow an upholstery channel, you could probably get better tips. My uncle had an upholstery shop. I am not my uncle, so. But I don't have any wrinkles. I think I'm okay there. I'm gonna cut this little bit off so that hopefully I can get a straighter line when I attach the other piece onto it. We'll see how that goes. Okay, right now got that. It looks good, it feels good. Throw out that piece and take a look at our box. See how everything feels so far. Yeah, everything's still good. A little loose, but that's to be expected because the rest is not on there. Okay. So, cool. Then we need to figure out how we're doing the rest. So we will do some folding. Do some folding. And there we go. We've got a piece. We have an idea of how much we need to cut for excess. So let's do that. If I had used the ruler, this would probably be a straighter cut, but I kind of committed to it, so I'm just going to keep going. Alright, same deal. I'm not trimming the piece off just because I don't know how far I might need to go. I might need to go a little more. And the interior should be the flattest point. So I'm going to take the edge here that has the flattest cut, made by the manufacturer. Pull enough back so I can continue to peel. Okay, good times. Stick this as far in there as I can, get it flat. Okay, feeling good. Slowly work this up. Try to keep it flat. Back around. Trying to keep everything flat. Okay, so that's all good stuff there. And keep moving that edge up. Okay, so we're now at the terminal edge of what we needed. Okay. Try and use the box to help with the straight edge part of it. See. A little bit of excess is bothering me. Don't want to push too hard because any excess pressure might mess up the box, but it looks like we got ourselves a cut. Whatever tools and implements you got to kind of get it all nice, you can do. Okay, so that takes a lot of that stuff out. Got a little sticky business on me. Yeah, you can see a couple of these edges. If that bothers you, there's a couple ways to fix it, same as we fixed everything else. Just take good old dry erase. And nobody sees anything. Okay? So there's ways to cover up all your crimes and get all the other stuff. I was more worried about this being a little too thick on that bottom side, and that might cause certain things to get stuck. Alright, fit up. Since we're around the edges, perfect. Holds in, and that's what we wanted. That's why we have that Velcro on the top, is it'll hold itself until you shake it, and that makes it a lot easier to carry around, so you don't have to worry about anything. So that part is cool. We still have the back side here to do. We can ask ourselves what kind we want to do. It's not really enough to use the felt for that, so I'm not worried about it there. We can go on to the other sheet of felt. Okay, and then, you know, just kind of see where this one's going to take us. Do the same creasing mark on it, and yeah, cutting edges on this side. Okay, set this thing up. Good times. Give it a nice cut. That one cuts a lot better, and that's to be expected based on the type of material it is versus the first one. And interesting. Okay, so I know I want to go from around here flat and down, but I need to bring it in a little bit on the edges. So let's figure out how much I need to bring it in. Okay. Alright, looked like it was about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to take off only to that point, that 1/4 inch or so. And it really doesn't matter if this one is fully perfect or any of that business, because you know what, and I needed to take a little bit off of each side that way. So that it fits in there square. Okay, so I got a little off of each side. Take it all the way down here. And there are better people than me at cutting things. Listen to them if they have better suggestions in the comments. Otherwise, I'm gonna keep doing me. I'm gonna let you keep doing you. And yeah, so this should fold just about where we want, all the way down in there. I'm gonna make my life a little easier right now and just hit the edges of the inside with the marker preemptively. So if I do have anything missing or any stuff to account for later, I don't have to worry about that. And then same thing, I'm going to take as small a piece as I can with the adhesive off. Harder to do with gloves. Check and make sure this thing's recording. I got 2 minutes left. Alright, I'm going to start the so you get more time. So, taking the edge as best as we can on there. Just keep slowly making our way around. Using a thumb, using a finger, using whatever you got to get it down as close as you can into the creases until you make it over the lip. And there you go. You have a felted, perfect box for whatever it is that you want to put in there. I'm going to put the butcher. Okay, fits. Pops right back out. It stays in place. We can enjoy ourselves with that. I have the butcher cards right out of frame over here. And of course I set the model far away. But with a couple of more marker touch-ups, just for my own satisfaction, and really my satisfaction in this project is all that matters. Okay, got the butcher, he's got his cards, the butcher, he's in there. Put the box on. Now he's protected against everything beautifully. I can toss all the scraps. And final picture. There they are. Okay. So, I hope you enjoyed this. You can like, comment, share, subscribe. You can post in the comments links to your version of this, which will be cool. Here are mine. Lift test. Mind. Oh. Too soon. Did I speak too soon? If you're not getting enough grab, then you can take excess felt and set it up. Try not to Yeah, that self-adhesive stuff. Wow. Okay. Okay. Put that in there. Take this. Put that in there. There we go. We can lift it, no problem. We can shake it. Whoa. I think some of the adhesive got stuck. Is that what happened? Yeah. Anyway, basic concept. Stick one of those on there. Make sure it sticks fully to the edge. Or use something a little better. Let's try. This is what problem solving is all about, guys. Let's try a piece of the smaller one. Okay.
I know I stopped the video on a bit of a cliffhanger, but just so you know, it worked. Everything worked and came out pretty good. I have one last suggestion for you that I forgot to film, and I'm going to show it to you right now. Bam. Make a bunch of boxes. Then when you're done, you can put some Mod Podge. I put satin finish Mod Podge over the top of the paper labels. I was noticing that my fingers, the oils of my fingers were soaking into the paper, and I didn't like that look. So I just hit it with the Mod Podge. You can get that in different finishes if you like gloss. I don't suggest using matte because everything will just look kind of milky. And the same as you spread that glue on, you spread the Mod Podge over top. And that looks a lot better when it's not under harsh light and a flash from my camera. And it looks pretty good. Make everybody everything. The only size box that might trip you up a little bit is the Phoenix, and I don't know if I'm gonna make a video on that just yet. We'll see how this one does. And yeah, the bigger sizes, the Dragon King, the smaller sizes for survivors. I'm trying to come up with different solutions. I just got in the Giga Lion, so that would be another one. Terrain, I'd like to be able on the bigger pieces that have specific terrain to be able to just include the different terrain pieces as well as the minis. Something like the Lion Knight that has roll survivors. Like to put all that together in a nice little package like this. So yeah, that's what my shelf is going to look like now. And instead of just being packed into the corner, I can much more easily put these little tiny boxes in different places. I just finished, with the lion in the first round, so maybe I'm gonna pull out an antelope or the butcher or whatever's gonna go on, and I'll have a nice, easy time of quickly organizing my play area, and I can just keep going. And since this is Labor Day weekend, I hopefully will finish out a whole campaign. We'll see how it goes. If you enjoy this kind of content, then go ahead and subscribe. I don't always do builds. I do some builds, I do some painting, I do different things like that. Most of the time on this channel, I do Kickstarter reviews. So whenever a campaign comes out in the tabletop gaming space or RPGs, I try to let you know what's available. Lots of little tiny campaigns that you otherwise might miss, and even the big ones and different stuff like that. Try to come out with a video or two a week. So that's what my channel is mainly about, if you have never been here before. You can also check out my painting video on Nemesis, where I talk about how you can do your own sun dropping. And that has 3 parts, doing the basic stuff all the way to the more refined little pieces. That was all done on my airbrush setup, which I know a lot of people don't have, but at least it's another tutorial, help people out. If you have anything else to say, feel free to throw it in the comments. You can like, subscribe, share it with people that have Kingdom Death, and see if they would want to jump in and do this kind of thing. It's a fairly low price. If I have any adjustments, make sure you click down in the description, because I'll probably put the dimensions and other things like that there. And that's where you can communicate with me. Have a good one.